told you, I have my wine before the meeting and Lori has after the meeting, so that's how we.
I need to take the minutes.
She has to know what's going on, I don't know what's going on, so that's why.
Did you get that on camera?
Okay, all right, I'll call the meeting to order. We have one regular member absent, so someone make a motion to have Michael sit in place the regular member who's absent. So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, so Michael will be a regular member this evening. First order of business, approved minutes of March 30th, 2015.
Move we approve them?
For your second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Next item, budget for the 2015-2016 Water Pollution Control Authority.
Good evening.
I believe that the leases have a copy of our budget already.
Smaller version.
Yeah, I printed out a bigger one. I just feel that it might be easier for everybody to read.
Bigger letters?
Okay.
You pick it up, you tell us.
board's on the outside.
So I can put the little one away, is that it?
You know.
Well, a lot of the numbers aren't any bigger. That's all.
Great, I can see it now.
Well,
I can put the, oh, this
There we
is
go.
it's
good.
big and it's colored, so maybe we'll follow it together, just so everybody can see what we're doing.
I mean, this board has an average age of about 75.
Close that thing.
This is nice. I like this.
That's the first time.
Okay, so the WPCA has approved their budget and now will present it to you. And I'll just start at the top if you don't mind, give me a few minutes, we'll just go through the whole thing. The salaries, we're looking to hire a new employee. One of our employees will be retiring. Instead of him collecting a big check at the end, so to speak, his retirement and his sick time, he's asked to use some of that, but to come into the plant. So basically work 30 hours a week, but he will only get to plant 10 to 12 hours a week. And it was a good transition for me to take over when I needed something. He was there to help me out. And he's still there. He won't be retiring until October, so we needed to carry him in the budget until October. So in lieu of that, the new person is going to cost us their salary is roughly $32,000. So that's the difference in that. And again, you know, that the weekends, overtime, that's just for the new person also. The yellow is fixed costs. There's not much we can do with fixed costs, obviously we all know that. Workman's comp and general insurance. So those numbers, some went up, some went down. I'm sure you've seen that across the board on your budget. If we go down to repair and maintenance of vehicles, we added an extra $1,000 because we want to purchase a set of tires for one of the trucks. And then plant maintenance, with the plant being new in the technology, the computers, stuff is so expensive to replace. And we're up to almost a 5-year mark now. We added $7,200 to our repair and maintenance. I don't even know, to be honest, if that's going to cover some of this stuff. To replace one mixer, to have it rebuilt, it's about $3,000. We've got 6 of them.
And what are they,
Those are in one of the tanks as part of the process.
and what's the equipment in, what kind of condition is it in right now?
Well, it's 5 years old. It was all brand new during the upgrade. But that doesn't mean that we haven't had breakdowns and failures already. We spent a numerous amount of money on a couple of motors that control valves that it's also a process. They're $850 a piece. I think we replaced 6 of them last year. So we felt that we needed to add some money to that. Electricity, we felt we could knock $5,000 off of it. Diesel for the generators. Heat, the town went to a contract for propane. We were able to get on that also with Bruce Davis, and we felt we could knock $2,600 off of that.
Why do you think you deduct 5,000 from electric?
Because we've gone 3 years now, and we had a pretty good baseline on what it would cost us,
Okay.
and that's what they took.
So it's been running a little lower than was budgeted previously.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep. Sludge disposal, again, we've looked at an average. We took $7,000 out of that line item.
And again, this is on what you've used in other years and average it out, so you think that 7,000 minus 7,000 will be okay?
Yes. Yep.
Now, where's that paid to? That's paid to,
MDC?
MDC, Metropolitan District, basically, this is the solid sludge that settles the bottom of the tanks.
Correct.
And it goes to MPC, okay?
And then they take it and they process it and incinerate it usually after. We don't have any way to get rid of it now that the landfill is closed.
Okay.
So, our lab supplies, we're doing more testing, so we added $1,000 to it. And that's also for the nitrification, denitrification, we have to pay the state credits every year. So we were really working hard to try and get that number down. Processed chemicals, if you remember a few years right after the upgrade, we had some corrosion problems with the tanks. The concrete was falling apart. And what we found was the pH was too low in the tanks. So we've been trying to test and see how much we actually have to use. And that number, again, chemicals aren't cheap, that number we feel we have to add 5,000 to it. Sewer line maintenance, gas and oil for vehicles. We saw the drop from $4 a gallon to $3, and now we're down a little bit. Didn't want to get really crazy. I still average 4,000 gallons a year for $3 a gallon. I think we'll probably see $3 a gallon again, so. But we were able to take $3,000 out of that line item. Sewer line maintenance, we added 10,000 to that. We have some I&I work that's coming up, and there's stuff that we could do to that instead of coming back when we do the full project and asking for a lot of money. There'll be some repairs in manholes that we'll be able to fix ourselves. Also in front of the speedway, going to a resident, we had a failure, and we had to dig up the road. And we were familiar with that one. That wasn't a cheap bill. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure it's not going to be a cheap bill. We felt we just didn't have enough money in that line item. The next one, state inspection permit fees. We've been spending roughly $30,000 in nitrogen credits for the last 3 years. We were able to find a glitch in our computer system that was programmed in when the plant was upgraded, and it was calculating our flows, adding about 400,000 gallons a day to it. Now the pounds formula, and that's how you figure out your nitrogen credits, you add flow to it, so to figure the whole thing out. We spent in 2011 $37,000. If we had the flow adjustment, we would have only spent 31. In 2012, we spent 39,000. If we knew this flow adjustment, we would only spend 19. In 13, we spent 31,000. It would have only been 6,200. This year, with the help of the engineers, DEP, we were able to only spend $10,000 once we adjusted the flows. We're asking for the $51,000 back through DEP as a credit. We're not sure where we're going to end up with that yet.
So if I understand what you're saying, is that you've got more accurate measurements now from the, as to the nitrogen coming out of the plants, and that there was mistakes before?
Correct.
And that's what the reduction, this is on state inspection permit fees?
Yes, that's why it looks at $23,000.
Okay.
Can you get credit for prior years?
I'm sorry?
Can you get credit for prior years?
We've applied to DEP about it. We're going to see what they're going to say. They also have some other people working on it. It's a discussion the board hasn't gotten to yet of what we do next, but it's coming up. The blue, our capital accounts, over the last 3 years, we had in the budget, we were putting money away for those accounts. And those capital accounts, again, pump station rehab, line maintenance, equipment, lease purchase, I'm sorry, not lease purchase, vehicle replacement. With the things that have gone on at the plant that we haven't been able to put that kind of money away. So those numbers actually look really big. There was some unpredicted money from 3M. Their bill was a lot more this year than what we predicted in our budget.
Is that based on flow?
Yeah, it's $83,000 more than what we were predicting.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt with that, we could put the money back into our capital accounts. And because our passbooks are down, we don't have a lot of stuff in them. This way it would help us, we wouldn't have to raise our funds, our fees to anybody, and it'd be a good way to put it back in. So that's what we would like to do with that. And then the railroad, they just went up $850. So overall, it is a 9.2% increase this year in the budget, but our revenues were 11.3%. So we're not raising our fees, we're not asking for any more money from anybody, and that's what our budget is.
So you're not asking for an increase in the sewer use fees this year? If I understand, I know we talked about this, so.
Correct.
And the sewer fees that you get will cover this.
Total revenue, yes.
And it looks like the majority of it's going to a reserve, am I correct?
83,639 is gonna go back into the capital funds.
We haven't put a lot of money in capital funds last 3 or 4 budgets. Basically, we ran negative for the last 3 or 4 budgets and had to use the past look accounts. Keep our budget flat. And that account's dwindling and we want to replenish it in case we have emergencies like 140, we had to do 200 feet of pipe, reline it. We were lucky because the company was in field, so we got it at a reasonable rate for like $15,000 to do that pipe. It would have cost us a lot more if we had to bring the equipment up, so we kind of lucked out there. And,
If you, oh, good, sorry.
no, I was just saying, so those accounts have been depleted down low and we need to bring it back up, so if we do have emergencies in the future, or, we need to replace one of the vehicles, so we'll have the money, we won't have to raise our rates. We're trying not to raise the rates. We're hoping this rate increase that we did last year will carry us a couple of years.
How many employees do you have right now?
A total of 8.
Total of 8.
Yeah, and DEP has a worksheet that you figure out, they base it off of all the different criteria in your plant. What level your plant is, what you do for process, how you haul your sludge, and that's where they say we should be. They actually say we should be a little bit higher, but 8 is realistic in their survey.
But you want to have 9 because you want to hire one.
I'm asking for 9 only because we're having somebody leave in October. We really need to have somebody new start in July, because that's when we do all our sewer line cleaning. That person needs to come in and help us with sewer line cleaning. As I took the promotion to superintendent, there was a person that was a truck driver, moved up to the chief operator position. So he's really daily operations in the plant. So it really took 2 of us, so to speak, off the road when we took this. So we really need to have somebody else that can drive truck, can clean sewer lines, maintenance of the plant, all around general. But I'm asking for an entry-level person. I'm not asking for somebody to come in at a high level.
And what's the pay?
And that's the 38,000.
Yeah, it's 1739 is what their salary,
17.39 per hour?
yeah. We
Which
bring them in,
isn't a lot of money, so.
no, we would bring them in at 15 an hour. Once they got their grade 1 license from the DEP, then we would bump them up as the contract is set to.
And this is only from the July to October timeframe, that's why it's only the 39,608 total between the two, yes?
Yeah, I had to carry 25,000 for the other person from July till October.
Okay.
So if you take the 25 from the 37, you're looking $12,000 increase. But you're getting a year employee.
revenues exceed your expenditures, where does the excess go?
Back into our capital account.
Back into the account, so it doesn't go to the town?
No. WPCA's totally funded by sewer user fees. No money can be taken from WPCA's per state statute and put in general funds. And we can ask, because the town owns our pump stations and equipment, we maintain it. That's how the budget is.
You've always been 100% funded from sewer use fees, is that correct?
Right, for the total operation and maintenance.
And connection fees, other fees you collect, yeah.
Correct.
And that money it has to be kept separate because it's paid by sewer users for the sewer system, it can't be used for anything else.
But the equipment belongs to the town?
The equipment belongs to the WPCA, the structures, pump stations, building, sewer lines, the town owns.
Okay.
So-
They're not a separate legal entity, they're just an agency that, of the town, like the Board of Education, right?
Funded by reimbursement.
Funded by, yeah, they're,
We own, but you maintain,
Right.
right,
just making sure.
All of them is us.
Yes.
yeah. the town owns them.
How much does the town pay for the bonding of the projects you guys done? So the taxpayers are paying for that, that doesn't show up in your cost, yeah.
Correct.
So how much are we paying
About
as a town?
$11 million that major project was,
Well, plus we have the sewer pump stations.
pump
that we
stations
added
added to
and
that, yeah.
I&I, so, and those are just bands. In the financial statement, there's a debt service page,
Yeah.
and it shows you the sewer
Yeah.
the sewer part of it.
So the taxpayers still pay to the bonding on that?
Correct.
And it falls because the town owns the structures.
But why is it that those that are, I'm trying to understand this, those that are connected to the sewer benefit from the equipment, but the other residents in town pay for the service also, pay for the equipment?
You don't pay for the service, you pay for
Pay for the
the,
equipment,
you pay the capital of the bonding of the
Right.
building. The building, it's like the school system.
Can that be included in the budget, I think is what Ted's getting at. Is there a reason why that can not be included?
Well-
They're at a surplus, so why can't that?
The
That bonding.
surplus is, it's a separate fee that's kept separate from the buildings and such. That's for strictly operations,
Okay.
basically,
And maintenance of the
maintenance of the plant.
lines.
Maybe I'm reading in a little bit too, but I mean, if we're turning around and saying we're not gonna have an increase in what the fees are, but the fees in the long run are not gonna cover the overall, if a major, let's say renovation needs to take place, that's coming back to the town,
Right.
okay?
We don't budget
Whereas,
for any major.
understand, so what I'm saying is wouldn't it be more appropriate that the users, we're funded, okay, the town has funded it, where let's say maybe 75% of the town doesn't use it, but we've paid for it. Wouldn't it make sense almost to turn around and take a look at the fees that are being associated with it, programmed out to cover any long-term maintenance that you're gonna see?
I
In
think
the
what some towns
facilities?
do is, yes, they roll in a bond to the sewer users fee as a
Okay.
separate cost, but that'll be up to the town fathers to decide whether they wanna do that.
I don't think you can, you know, I went all through that before,
Yeah.
I think,
I know it's been talked about in the
Yeah.
past, and, it was
it's
decided.
almost like saying,
Right.
it's almost like saying people pay for the school system, the kids that use it pay for the bond,
Right,
and you
Well,
can't do it.
I flush my toilet, I'm paying for that in my house, but you flush your toilet and I'm paying for you to do that too.
Well, you do
So-
it away,
Right.
because we take the sewage when somebody comes and pumps your tank, it comes to the plant where you process. We pay for
But I'm paying for that.
You're
Well, no, you're
paying
paying
for
for the
it.
trucking.
you're paying for the truck and the pump, you're not paying for the processing.
So the truck dumps for free?
No, you charge for
Yeah,
that.
there's a charge.
Yeah.
So I'm paying for it.
I think if you calculate it out, it's not uncommon for that, the way you guys are talking about doing
Right.
it in other towns. Bigger towns, I don't think you're gonna be able to, fund it with the number of connections that we have. You have 2,200 connections in town, and that number would be so large, I don't think people can afford it.
In fact, when we, consolidation, one reason we had consolidation, the borough of Stafford Springs could not afford to buy a treatment plant. And that was just a screening that they had then. So when the town took the whole system over, we were able to build a plant, that was in 1970.
Right, I mean, the initial load as far as with the bonding and everything else went in, I understand that. But if we're saying, if we're looking at the fees, and we're saying the fees that we're charging are basically keeping us on, let's say, the even flow, if you will.
Correct.
No pun intended,
You got it.
okay? You know, should we say, maybe we need to look at the fees that are being charged and give yourself more of a cushion, and you're building the capital fund that you have that's there, give yourself a cushion, so if we need to, let's say, reline one of the tanks, or replace one of the tanks, there's a sludge fund, another one, that's there, that you can turn around and use that in order for that infrastructure, so you're putting less of a burden on the total taxpayer of the town when that need arises, that's all I'm looking at.
Well, you can do that up to a point, which is, I think, what the 16,000, the blue lines are.
Right, you have budgeted some of that.
Extra budgets,
Didn't they?
I mean, the rule is a sewer use charge can only be used for the operation of the system, it cannot be used for improvements. So then, the question is, how do you pay for improvements? You could do assessments, for example, when we did the plant down there, you could do an assessment against everyone who benefits from it. And then you'd be basically putting a lien on everyone's house for a relatively large sum of money. But the thing is, you understand a sewer system is both a public benefit and a private benefit. Because by having a public system, we don't have sewage flowing into Staffordville Lake, we don't have pollution problems that would affect the whole community. So basically, you split the cost in one way or the other. I mean, there are towns that do make the users pay 100% of the cost, and there's towns where, I know Enfield, I think Enfield pays 100% of the cost. There are no sewer use charges in Enfield, so you can go one extreme or the other.
But in most of those municipalities, the sewers cover the majority of the town.
That's true, yeah,
Yeah,
towns
so
like
that you can-
Enfield.
you can do that.
But if you look at the debt service, the amount that we pay each year towards the mill rate is not that large.
And didn't they, at one time, back a number of years ago, you had a sizable amount, didn't they give it, for something we did on a major project, that they gave money from that
So if
line
that
item they had,
can't fail,
the extra
we could
cash?
hire somebody else.
Seems to be a
Well, it's happened
sometime.
several times. In other words, we've had money set aside for sewer improvements, and
Yeah,
that's,
but I
mean,
think they
generally-
need some from your slush fund that we used.
slush fund's probably not the best word, but I mean, we do
Well,
have,
better than s-
no, we do accumulate funds
Yeah.
to improvements, and they go back to the town. For example, whenever there's when we had the industrial cost recovery, that was, all went back to the town general fund. It doesn't go into user charges. You can't use that for user charge. It has to go back to where the money came from
Right.
to pay for that, so.
And if the sewer line runs by your house, aren't you assessed?
Yes, you were,
So if
back
you
when they
have
put it
it,
on the.
When it was
Right.
constructed, yeah, but that just pays for the
Remember it
cost of
well.
construction. It doesn't pay for the cost of
Yeah.
maintaining the system.
No, that's the connection fee, which is a totally separate.
But it didn't
fee.
cover the cost of the building, but it covered the pipe and
Right.
installation.
Right, that's right,
Right.
yeah.
Looking around at different plants and what you should have for reserve, the number now is roughly $1 million, because it would, and I guess we would help, which we did, we relined that 140 line. But it really is, we have roughly 250,000, and you can eat that up in no time at all. I mean, it cost us $65,000 to replace 10 feet of pipe, 4 years ago. So I guess that's really what we're trying to do, is build up that capital. And it might be, like you say, it might be for something, so we don't have to come back to you and say, hey, we need $500,000 to do this. Not saying we would or we wouldn't, but, so we're really trying to put some money away.
You indicated you have an 11% increase in your sewer use fees this year, is that what you're?
No, just in the budget itself.
Oh,
There's no increase in the sewer, it's still.
I don't mean the charges, but in terms of your income, you said it was up.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, revenue was 11.3%.
And why was that up so much?
3M.
Okay, that was all just because of industrial users.
Industrial users,
Okay.
yeah.
3M is our biggest
User?
user.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, they're using about 450,000 gallons a day of water. Yeah,
And they can't process themselves, so you must be processing it.
we're processing it, but we're also working very closely with DEP on their new permit. So that's, maybe they won't be giving us as much as they have been in the past.
Are they taking water from the river that's coming from Connecticut
And
water?
if you want, they don't recycle any of their stuff because it's medical, so they can't recycle.
DEP had to recycle, so they were able to lower their bill.
Ricky, how do we build Avery Park, and how would we build the new 79 units on the new site? Is that built the same way as a resident?
Well, the housing authority, there's
Still
so
challenging
special
that.
things. One of the conversations that we'd like to have coming up is, I guess there's a, they call it a pilot, the agreement with the town, is that, it's an acronym for something.
Payment of little taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We would like to make sure the sewer department isn't part of that, and it would just be the town that's part of that, because we still have to.
Process it.
Right. The last few years, I believe they have sent us a check. They don't know if they're obligated under the old contract that they have to. But with the new one, it's definitely something that we would like to have a say in.
I would get on board quickly, because things are happening very quickly now.
Yes, we received a phone call the other day from the engineer that's designing the place.
Okay.
And he's got our new regulations and what we're looking at.
Because in 60 days we have to start, so things will move really rapidly when the winter starts. And we're meeting tomorrow night to see what happened.
Okay. Yeah, so that contract, is definitely something that we
Okay.
need to work on.
It would be advantageous to you if you have it done that way.
Yes.
So there's been
I don't know if it's being
Conflict.
presented.
Well, it's become litigious over the last couple of
Yes,
years.
it has.
Right.
They basically stopped paying, and then they said they didn't have to pay, and then I don't know where we are at this
They
point.
paid,
I think they
They
paid.
paid.
They're paying now?
Yeah.
They're paying now, okay.
yeah, because that's under the old agreement.
Right, I remember looking at that with
Existing
you,
housing
and it said they had to pay so
authority,
many dollars, and,
Right, and we did.
Until it changed its form, which is where they're at. Now it changes its form, now the town can do, can do that abatement or whatever.
but there's like a
Decide
statute that
it's gonna
says we
be-
can only charge so much, is that correct?
Yeah, it was,
Is that
it was a calculation provided by DECD when the, place was built. And it was in 3 different levels, so there was 3 different rates.
Stages.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
But they are
we've got
current.
time, but no,
It's on the agenda.
yeah.
Okay. Any more questions on WPCA?
No, good job, and I love the color coding, it really helped a lot.
And the big print.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
I need to increase my budget for a color copier for you guys.
Yeah, everyone is,
Color
yeah, color last week, it was good too, a lot of
Now, my
money we had
shades of
color.
gray are just now cutting it.
No shades of gray.
And the
What kind of a budget process are we getting?
Rick, I always remember on the explanations, and it's wonderful to have them, because all you have to do is glance over and you've got it.
They are cut off just because I didn't, but the majority of them are on there. It would have carried over another sheet, obviously, so.
No, they're good.
Thank
Excellent.
you. Paul, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna boil some more sap.
I think you should.
Get to work.
Yes,
We all need to.
thank you.
Keep going for the pictures of it.
Yeah, it's working hard down there right now. I gotta go relieve it.
Okay, the next item is the service district budget, and I'm the chairman of the service district commission, so I'll present that budget to you. The service district, I think it was on March 6th, approved a budget of $400,465, which is $250 over the current budget. The only change is in the judgment and losses. That's, as for the town, that's money we pay back for overpaid sewer use charges, so everything else is the same as of 2014 to the 15 approved budget. We basically approved the budget where we would pay for that $35,000 out of revenue from our cash balance fund, which is substantial. The cash balance fund is $401,000 for the service district. And, I'm sorry, it's $220,000, which is what will be spent this year. So basically, we approved the budget that would be paid for by taxes of $370,465. This required a slight increase in the mill rate from 2.22 to 2.22.
Yeah, what do they think electricity's gonna do?
Use, did he say it was the use that they had? they said that they turned around and did a
Yeah,
three-year
they
average?
said- Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that was,
No, he's talking about the service district.
Oh, I'm sorry.
service district.
Street district, let me look at my notes here, I do have it.
46 to 42, and everything else I read said electricity's gonna go up, so I good.
Didn't fly? Oh, yeah, put the LED lights in. Yeah,
It says the amount billed by CLMP for service district streetlights, so I would assume it's, based on this year's billing. Did you know that, or?
That's all we pay through there is the street lights, so.
So I was over budget last year, and I brought it in the right time.
But the rates did go up, so.
who checks the streetlights?
Excuse me?
Who checks the streetlights that are on? There's several, and I've gone by, that the lights on the pole are not.
I'm not sure who's supposed to report that.
That's why there's a decrease.
Yeah, we're saving some money, it's true.
We
Well,
have
those-
3 lights out.
That one's been out for 6 months, well, we'll just discontinue that one.
Yeah, I don't know if it gets reported to the selectman's office and then they call CLMP, or if someone could just.
Well, it is handled
CLMP.
to the selectman's office, if there's any complaint about service district issues, that takes care of
But
it.
take the numbers up.
Make a note, that's
Like
someone who checks
40,
streetlights.
couple of them.
You know, I'll give you a good example, I was paying for one up in Stafford, though, that Benny Museo took
Right,
over.
exactly, they just need to.
And, my uncles lived in the house up there, and I was sitting there one day on the porch, and I said, the streetlight's out. He said, oh, that's been out for months. Well, I had been paying for it for months too, you know, so it's,
Right.
you know, so somebody needs to check.
We have to call our own.
And it does get called up to Beth, because there was one time they were saying what side of the street are the lights on, and I remember when we campaigned across from the senior center, there was a light out, and they wanted to know,
Which
because
side of the
there was
street?
one, yeah.
Who's it belong to?
So
Right.
they do call up,
Okay.
up to her,
Give them the poll number.
yeah.
Well, we might wanna get one of the highway employees at least to, spot check them something in there or something.
See, maybe if I give my poll number, I don't have to pay for it. Did he?
Are you paying for yours? You're outside?
Yeah,
You're
the one
outside?
by the corner by 140?
Because you're just outside of the
You're like the
borough.
first house outside the borough,
Yeah.
right?
It's $16 a month now, something like
Is
that.
that what it is?
Yeah. It's worth it.
Okay, any more questions on it? Okay, then we'll move on to the anticipated revenues, and if everyone's concerned to that page on your budget presentation, then maybe Lisa can go through that, because you prepared this, right? Included.
Yes.
Yeah, this is my color coded, you said?
Yeah, it is.
It's at the beginning.
It's the beginning,
Right at
before
the
the,
beginning.
we got a
You should
page
have
that says
revenue-
revenues Board of
revenue
Selectmen,
tab.
and revenues Board of Education, those two pages, right?
It starts off with the revenue board of selectmen, intergovernmental. Yeah, no, that's just based on the state.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, yep, that's where it starts. The intergovernmental is all the grants that we receive from the state. Those are all provided by the state. A couple are from the tax office and assessor's office, they provide me with their information. So the major increase there
Board of
is,
Selectmen, got it.
in the miscellaneous state grants we put in for the 50-some-odd thousand for the bus that they're anticipating to get, that they've been awarded, the bus has been ordered.
Where is that, Lisa?
It's on the very miscellaneous grants under the intergovernmental,
Okay, that's, all right.
just above the state police.
Oh, I see, okay. And that bus is shown as an expense on the other side of the budget, right?
Correct, it's in the
Okay.
community center budget for the bus. The town's portion is like $14,000 for that brand new bus, which is really a good find. Well, there's really no major changes there. The municipal revenue sharing grant, which they now call it a municipal project grant, went up 26,000. But, you'll see they took away from the non-tax paying hospital, which is like a payment in lieu of taxes.
Mhm.
That's about for the intergovernmental. Like I said, that's all provided by the state.
Those are basically different forms of state grants that we get.
Correct, those are all state grants. And the SD and DEMIS equal the expenditures in the budget.
Are these based on the current budget that's before
Yes,
the
this is-
legislature, or?
Yes, this is what they sent out in February.
But this is not, hasn't been approved by the legislature.
So
this
these
is
could
still
change. Well, they
questionable.
tell us not to use these, but,
Right,
but that's
we
what
did one year, they told us what.
We don't have anything else to use. so-
Yeah,
Every
exactly.
year they told us, well, they gave us all the information
That's
for
all we got to go by.
$120,000, we got $128 of it.
Right, and the state's got $150 million deficit. And what do you get these through CCM or,
No, from the state.
State.
oh, they come directly
Yeah.
from the legislature?
And
Okay.
state
Send out
municipal
a-
aid, it's right on their website.
Plus used to send out us a whole thing.
Yeah, they give us a letter with it
Yeah.
as well.
Okay.
And every day, every office has been, you know, looking for other options or other grants that they could potentially file for. The next page is the local sources. These are all of the charges that go through all of our offices.
Mhm.
Starting off with license fees and permits, that's all the, those are more like the driveway permits. The town clerk revenue, she estimates that revenue. The zoning boarding, they're estimated at, 125, we increased that. And we've had, as you can see, if you look at the past, the revenues that we collected are much higher than that $100,000 level that they've been putting in. And that's with all the new solar that came through. So that's what helps build our cash fund balance. are
So
these-
this building permit
Right,
fees and
these
solar?
anticipated revenues come in higher, and that goes right down to the bottom line. The service district administration, that's a fee that they pay for the services for the tax and treasurer's office.
Yep.
Let's see. Constable fees, we dropped to match the expenditure. Recycling revenue, that was dropped by the Public Works. Give us that information for recycling revenue and transfer station. And the biggest drop is the town of Ellington upgrade, because we received that full payment.
Well, that's a one-time payment.
As a one-time payment, it was like a big drop in income, but it was a one-time payment, so.
The drop in recycling, right, 20,000. They also dropped the tipping fee, right, $20 a ton, was it?
They did get a new contract.
Yeah, and I think it's 20 that they dropped.
Yeah, so they did
So,
drop that fee.
the other night, I think I asked if we had those numbers, but maybe you should get those numbers, see the drop, I don't know if the tonnage has gone down,
Mhm.
but $20 a ton is quite a, I think we were paying almost $90 a ton or $70 a ton. So you take $20 off, I don't know how many tons we put through it, but quite a bit. Should
And with
be-
the new increase for their minimum $5 for the scale,
Yeah,
the bag sales have increased.
yeah.
And that also runs through the transfer station revenue, so that they're keeping the same. But they did say they noticed a drop in contractors, but it is winter, they're not doing a lot of work, so we'll see what happens
Right.
now that spring is here. Maybe that'll pick up a little bit.
Plus the contractors could do the dumping, too.
Right, that's what I'm saying, it just reopened in December.
Right.
I noticed by the house back today, there were two dumpsters came to town by a different hauler. They were going somewhere, I'm not sure they were going, but it was probably trash was gonna be taken out of town.
The other, down towards the bottom, you'll see the ZREC income from CLMP and the board realized savings for the ZREC program. Those estimates could go up. I can increase these to match the cash flows that have been provided to us for those programs. But before I raise them, I figured we should discuss, with the new project, the 17 million project, there was discussion of a new fund, a utility fund for these projects where all the money would go in there and then all the lease payments came out of there. So before we go and mess with those figures, I needed to find out from you if we establish it with, this is just the lease program for the ones that have already been completed. We just got the financing we're going through the process of getting the financing for the 17 million solar arrays and the geothermal project. So that won't start till next year, and we probably won't see a payment till the following fiscal year, because we have asked for a delayed payment so we can recognize the savings and CREC revenue to make that first payment.
So you're saying, based on, we turn around and take all of the different entities, whether it be safety, whether it be the schools and everything else, we just take the electricity out of their budget and we put it into the one budget?
Well, the way it was originally established, it would stay in our budgets, and basically we transfer the money into that fund. So it would be like a check to the town of Stafford utility fund. So it shows in our line item as more of a debt service that's going over there to pay down these leases. And then that way, that cash flow that they say it's going to be positive, it will build up a balance, and we had discussed that balance, once it got to like $500,000, then that money would come back to the town general fund after that to establish a fund to maintain the system as well. So, I just didn't know for this budget year if I should budget those, it's the 4 leases for the high school expansion, West Stafford, the community center, and the elementary school all had work done that reduces their electricity. So they're gonna see their savings, they'll cut me a check for town Stafford, and then I'll get the money from CLP, and right now I'm recording that revenue in our general fund budget and the lease payments in our general fund budget under the Board of Selectmen. So I need guidance from you if that fund should start this year, and we pull the revenue out and we pull the lease payment out of this budget, and it goes into that other fund.
So let me make sure I understand, the 50,000 is, what we get, the first 50,000, we get that from CLP, is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
That's
And
what
that,
you-
according to their cash flows, that should be double that.
Should be double that, but that's a safe figure.
We haven't seen much
We
yet,
haven't
so
seen
I-
it yet though, so we're going.
Right, exactly, I'm hesitant of
And then the other 50,000, the Board of Ed actually
savings.
gives the
Should
money
equal that.
back to us, is that correct?
Correct, that would come
And
back
that's
to us.
shown as an expense in their budget somewhere?
Correct, it would be show as debt service in their budget.
I believe the Board of Finance already set up that, what you're talking about,
Right, well, that's what,
the 500,000, what you're talking about. with-
correct, but it was originally started with that $17 million project. So I didn't know if I had to wait till that's not actually gonna start probably, so maybe June at this point. I know they're close, but that money is going to,
Well, that'll be in this coming year's budget then.
no, the lease payment won't be.
Well, what is your question? So the 100,000, if you took it out of here, it would go into a fund?
It would go into, that would be a special revenue fund, utility fund, that revenue would go over to there. The lease payment would come out of the Board of Selectmen's budget and go over to there.
And is the lease payment in the Board of Selectmen's budget now?
It is.
And how much is that?
I believe it's $172,000 for all 4, 170 something.
Well, we still have to pay the extra 70,000.
Well, the two of it, the savings should double, so there should be enough between there should be $200,000 of revenue going in and $172,000.
I think we should leave it alone for this year, then
Yeah,
consider changing it next year.
well, that's why I'm asking.
Well,
And
what
then,
would
because I'll
you,
need to bump those up to the
what do you
cash
think,
flow.
Lisa, what do you feel is the better way to go?
Either way, it's the same effect. It's not affecting taxpayers because the money covers, so the increase in the selectmen's budget is covered by the increase in revenue.
So it's a right to.
It is a wash.
Yeah, I think
It's
that's,
actually a plus.
I think this way the public can see the income and expense.
Right, that's true. Okay. So we'll leave it as it is?
We'll leave it as it is.
We'll leave it
So
as
those
is.
numbers will double. So they're both come up to, well, 99,000 for each of them.
Well, are you going to change these
I will
numbers?
change them, yeah.
Okay, so you'll change these numbers by Monday?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So are you telling me that would increase our revenues by another 50,000 or 90?
48,000.
What's that?
48.
48,000?
It'd be 98,000.
98,000.
They're both going up, the Board of Ed savings and the
Alright, so, okay.
98 or 99,000?
98.
98,000, so you're anticipating an additional 98,000 on top of what's here?
Correct.
Those
No,
numbers-
no, no,
What?
yes, on top of,
On
what's
top
that,
of-
49 to each one.
So you'll have 99 and 99, instead of
Yes.
50, okay.
Because I met with Sam and we discussed, we were looking at the cash flows and figured that that's what we're gonna go by for the anticipated savings and revenue.
So you now show, adding all the numbers together, that the revenues are down 22,132, is that correct?
Mhm.
But if you make that change, then it would be, revenues would actually be up by about $76,000, is that?
On my numbers, you're gonna gain
No, it would still be down a little
172,000.
bit.
The total revenues,
Oh, no, it would be up.
say 172,000.
Right?
Yes, and other one, the human services, which is the family services fee, I dropped that, because if you look at the prior years, we never got to that $100,000 level. And then this year, it's even lower. Now, he has mentioned increasing their hours so they can bill more. I don't know that they're gonna get to that, because they haven't started union negotiations yet. So I think I'm gonna be comfortable leaving that at the 60. If it comes in higher, great.
Where are you now, right now?
The human services consultation, which is the family services, it's
Isn't
right in the middle of the
Oh,
local
okay.
sources.
that 120,000?
Yeah, wait a minute.
No, it's just 60.
I have
Oh,
The
no, it is
actual
the
revenue for
120.
13, 14,
Oh, no, it is the
63.
120.
120,000, yeah.
Yes, so I left it.
You didn't drop
I
it.
didn't drop it. I was thinking I dropped it.
And that's almost a wash.
No, you didn't.
You dropped the constable fees
Right.
because,
I dropped the
Right.
constable
that's
fees.
because the
because
state's
it's to stay
covering
the
some of it?
same. Yeah, I did it based on what we actually be getting.
Well, the 120 we get from insurance payments, isn't that correct?
For the constable?
Human services,
Oh,
no,
human services, yes, but we
Consultation.
haven't been getting that much. We had one good year, 12, 13, and then it's dropping, and this year it's dropping even more.
so now.
We don't have the family services director, so they've been, functioning without a director for like the last 3 months.
So you're saying that could be overstated then? on the
I think so, I think it may be overstated.
What, do you wanna change that for purposes of?
Well, I'll talk to Rich and see what he thinks about, you know, he's still working with a consultant and trying to figure out where they stand, so I'll come ask him tomorrow, and if I change it, I'll have it by Monday.
You'll have an answer by Monday on that? Okay, so that's another potential change then.
Correct,
And that's a loss of 30,000.
correct.
The fire marshals, that's all he brings in?
Yeah, and this year he's on track to get to a lot better, his revenues. Yeah, I think he's already close to that $15,000 figure for this year, so he's doing better each year. The 1 year on here that shows low, the 12, 13, he had surgery, he was out for a good,
But he
2
never
months.
met, when we started this back, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago? His estimates he had were, I think it was on the board at the time, was like 3 times this.
oh, really?
Boy, it was huge. And
He's
Gordy
he's
challenged
small,
him that the fellow in New Britain wasn't making that amount of money.
small improvements then.
Yeah, so it's kind of,
The next page is the grants for the Board of Education, the big one, PCS, transportation, non-public, transportation, health, and adult education. And then their tuition receipt, and that's an estimate I need to get from Sam if he has any better figure for that, for the 120.
Is that based on union?
Yes, the kids from Union. And some pre-K, there's a couple of pre-K kids that they pay tuition from. And that's only for the special needs. Then we go down to the tax collector.
All right, let's start, so in other words, you show a loss of $30,000, is that correct?
Correct, and that's on their,
And that's mostly because of transportation grant?
correct,
That's a state grant that, to pay for our transporting students?
correct,
right?
yep,
Is that a figure that comes directly from the state budget,
yes,
or?
it does.
Yeah.
The tax collector
this one does.
gives me the auto tax supplement, the prior taxes, that 450, I was informed today that that's gonna be larger. She's got a list of potential tax sale properties that exceed that 450 level that would be done in August. So potentially that 450 is going to go up. I asked her to give me a revised letter as to what she thinks that figure would be, because that potentially could add another couple $100,000 there. So like I said, we're trying to get our revenues up.
Well, the 450 is already 50,000 higher, so.
Right, and she's thinking that number could be much higher. So she's going to give me a better figure.
You know, my experience with tax sales is only a certain ones of them bringing money. And, I mean, I would recommend staying with the 450.
Well, I'd like to at least see what she has to offer.
All right.
Because if you notice, each year we guess low. And, you know, like 13, 14, she had a tax sale,
Mhm.
and it's up to 700. Prior to that, it was 500. So she's doing good about getting some of those things in.
Well, some of those are quite
And
higher
now
than
they
that.
actually
That's what
hire,
you're saying,
she has a credit firm as well that helps her.
All right,
And it's
so that's a figure, you may have something different for us on Monday, is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay.
Where do we stand, Lisa, this is probably a question for Neil, maybe more than for you, but where do we stand on sale of municipal property? The Penny School building, the Borough School.
Well, did Rich ask you to draw up a RFP for sale of those buildings? Is something?
Hasn't asked me yet, he
Oh.
just said he might.
So,
I think
because I know he's looking into.
he was just talking about the two houses, the
Right.
ones on Westford Road and East Street.
I knew he mentioned something today in our department head meeting about selling a couple of properties, but not anything, not the penny. I don't know where that stands. He had it appraised and then put out an RFP for someone to sell it, and they didn't think it was worth what it was appraised at.
Well, the Borough School is done, that went to that agency that.
Is that ever transferred?
Yeah, it's been transferred.
And they'll be tax exempt, right?
I think so.
What do we, no, there is a tax gonna come from that, it's a sliding scale, it's gonna go up over time, if I recall the
I
agreement.
thought it was a not-for-profit.
I think it's 15 years or so.
No, I think we gave them, we have a tax deferral agreement with them. In other words, they don't pay much at the beginning, but it will go up as time goes on.
So that's done?
That's actually closed?
Yeah, it's closed, yeah, no, it's all done.
Yeah,
They
it's
were
just
accessible
all
building
final
permits.
for old school.
What's that?
There'll be building permits coming in.
Right, yeah, oh, yeah.
They were, there was somebody, Andy stopped at the house the other day, a fellow, he's doing IT here, and he was there a week ago Sunday with somebody going through their alarm system and stuff, so something is happening, I guess.
No, the deed's been recorded, they're ready to go, so
Yeah.
we've done everything, so.
Do you know where we are with the Penny School building? Yeah.
I don't know anything new, I mean, you guys talked about it today,
I
because
don't
last
know, I
time,
just asked
The
them.
Three of us were here,
the longer it sits there vacant,
yeah, we talked about
Unless
it at
it's
one of the
gonna be
meetings
I don't know.
3 months ago, and it was not moving.
I mean, now's the time to get it on the market. Interest rates are still low. The snow is almost gone. So, you'll find a broker that'll list it high, and we'll always find a buyer, so.
There was a company looking at it one time, but I don't know what's happened there.
Unless we have a plan for it. An alternative
You said
municipal,
the one that
municipal
sits
use
there,
plan.
the worst
I
it
gave
gets.
you one time.
You do?
I said I would love to. I don't have one.
The transfers in include the excess costs, money left over from last year, which I believe was 190.
Where are you, Lisa?
In that same, under the tax
Transfers
budget,
in
the
the bowl.
transfers in,
Okay,
um,
that 430.
the 443 figure, yes, that's 150 from the sewer pump stations. That's done, so that money will come in to pay the band down. So it's also reflected in debt service. So we got the revenue coming in, the debt service going out, that's a wash.
But that
And the
payment is shown
difference is-
in the budget,
Correct.
okay.
and 190 coming in for the, excess costs.
Okay,
money
let me get
that
that
was
straight.
left over.
What was the 225 in last year? What was that?
That was, 85 from the revale, or, yeah, 85.
Okay,
from
right,
revale.
because that came in from money that's saved.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, it was 80 from the revale, and the difference is 145 for excess costs.
Okay, so last year the excess cost grant payment to the town was 145,
Correct. This year it's gonna be 190.
so you said 190. And what are the other numbers to add, come up to the 443?
The difference is 153 for the, bond, the band pay down for the sewer pump stations that are completed.
Okay, that gives me 343.
The 190 and 153?
It's 343, yeah?
There's another 100.
Well, maybe it was 290 for the, that's what it is, 290 for the excess cost.
Okay, you can double check that
Yep.
between our money, okay. all right.
I think that's
Yeah,
right.
that
That's
is
the
right,
school board,
yeah.
I remember them saying that, so that's probably right,
Yeah,
okay.
because it was close to 300,000, so
Okay.
it's 290, I'm sorry.
Did they return anything in their regular budget out of the,
$59,000, 59,810 to be exact.
when did the town turn back? So,
Well, it's hard to read in the financial statement. It's a variable because between the unanticipated revenues and what wasn't spent adds to that increase into the cash fund balance, which it was like 700 and something.
I mean, whatever the increase in the cash fund balance came from either the town or the board of ed, there's no place else to come, so.
Right.
And you had a figure cash balance fund 16,800, that seems like a very specific figure for something, what's that?
That is for the Route 190 project that was for the sewer line by Dunkin' Donuts there. They had gotten money, and it was supposed to be done in that 1 year, so I just set it up in the general fund as a separate account. So that's what's left in that, and they've told me that that's finally done, and I can pay that down. That'll pay down the band, so that's why that's there.
Okay, so that money is money that's not gonna be spent for the purpose it was appropriated for, so it just goes back to the town.
No, it needs to go pay
Has to
down
go
the
to pay down
band.
band, okay,
Pay
all right.
down the band.
And is that shown as an expense in the?
It is,
Okay.
so that's a wash.
Okay, so can you prepare an updated figures for Monday, is that based on what we just, everything you just said?
Band.
Should write the bond, it's a short term.
Any questions, any of this, or? All right, so Monday, you'll have the updated figures on that, is that correct?
Yep, yep,
All right,
and
then
I'll
we can-
redo that front sheet.
And we can bring our calculators and see if we can come to a conclusion.
Just can't tell the school board till Wednesday.
Just can't what?
Can't tell the school board till the 8th now, even if you come to a conclusion on Monday.
You got it.
Meeting,
they can sit in,
Whatever you wanna do.
they can actually sit in if they wanna,
Right.
give us, tell them early if they give us some money back.
All right.
Not if they want to.
One question I had, and I apologize, I haven't been here for some of the meetings and things like that, but I know
Should apologize.
in,
We all can't, spend
I
time
know,
on the floor.
last year we established a capital project fund, if you will, for the board. And we used money that was to be spent on, I think it was for,
the move, the
the
relocation.
relocation, move and things like that. Would it be appropriate for us to turn around and take a look at capital improvements that we're looking at to be within the board, to be funded through that capital improvements project, or capital improvements fund, rather than putting it directly into the board's monies? And guess to understand, it's not like I wanna take money from the board, but I think there's a better way to go about showing the expenditures and things like that.
Okay.
Right now, if let's say we wanna, let's say increase the technology infrastructure and spend $100,000 on that, we will give it to them this year for that.
Mhm.
Okay, we are now measured by the state to say we have to give them that 100,000 next year because it's part of their budget. So to me, we're doing an injustice to ourselves by putting money in there that really isn't necessarily 100% geared towards the education of our students.
Mhm.
We should fully fund the education of our students to the greatest extent possible, but is there a better way to go ahead and fund everything we need to do, yet still maximize, if we can get 100% of the money from the state by saying an education budget is 15 million, then 20+ million, we're better off saying it's for 15 million to get all of the money from them. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm
You're
saying?
suggesting move it out of the school board budget? into
Move it
town
out of the
budget?
school board budget and put it into the town budget and still funding it, but making it into a fund. I mean, here's a good example. Okay, they said the cost was gonna be approximately, $60,000 for the move. They didn't spend $60,000, they spent $33,000, there was $27,000 left over. They're playing well in the sandbox, okay? But under prior years, we may never have seen that $27,000. Okay, so it makes sense to take capital expenditures and put it into our fund. You know, and I still think, I gotta talk to you a little bit more to make sure I understand more as far as this rebate with the electric expenses and things like that, this cost savings that's there. If they're saying the electric costs that we're budgeting them for is, let's say, $300,000, for example, okay? Their electric bill is $100,000, our fees, their portion of it is $100,000. There's $100,000 now that is sitting in the Board of Ed's budget that realistically, that's an expense that the town should take over. The electric costs for the entire town because of the cost savings measures we put into place with the solar. That's just my thoughts. It kind of keeps it in one nutshell, okay? Here's electric, and then you can turn around and measure what their usage is so that you can turn around and say, here's what the cost educator students are to give yourself a comparable, because every other town, there's a cost that's associated with that. It's just not in their budget. It's associated with it when you do the cost per student, if that makes sense. Technology is another thing. I think, we're spending money on technology that goes there. I mean, last year they asked for computers, the year before they asked for computers, they're asking for computers this year. One of my questions is, what are they doing with this equipment afterwards? I mean, heaven forbid. I have a computer at home and a laptop that's 5 years old, okay? Are they being recycled? Are they coming back into the other town offices? I don't know.
At one time, they still are, they were moving it as the more sophisticated up here, the less they're going back down to the lower grades. Now, whether they're doing that today or not.
Right, I mean, but it's the thing, it's realistically, that's a town expense. So it should fall underneath town equipment, okay, and part of the town's infrastructure that's assigned to the board. And when there's no longer a use for it, the town turns around, takes it back in and determines, is there a worth to it that we can sell, or is it garbage? But it realistically would be a town asset, okay? Again, just thoughts.
There was somebody here, we answered some of those questions, I think, when we were here, indicating that basically, it's a 5-year life cycle on any of this equipment, because the programs change so much, and they cannot use the current programs on the equipment they have.
On some of the equipment, yes, but a laptop might be good for 7 years for crying out loud, just because you can't use it there because of the programs that they're utilizing or something else, doesn't mean you might not be able to utilize it here, or Rich couldn't be able to utilize it here, or another town entity might not be able to utilize it. I mean, it's just
I think if you
funneling it through,
I think if you look at the number of computers they bought through the years, I know I haven't asked this, but last year we asked them how many computers are in the system now. They're in the hundreds. So by that, computers they bought 5 years ago are still in the system, but they may not be at the high school level. They've gone down to the junior high, they've gone down. So they don't get rid of them all because they shouldn't haven't bought, maintaining, I used to think it's like 600 something between laptops and everything.
I think what Brian's saying too is, there might be 100 of them sitting somewhere because
Oh, yeah.
they're just not usable by them anymore. but if they were
Right.
town's equipment, they might be able to use in other departments. And we talked about the whole thing with the capital, I know we did last year, and the year before, moving those things out. And didn't Rich already start meeting with the Board of Ed regarding that? He said
We are-
meetings regarding,
Yeah, we are meeting this week.
yeah, the meeting this week about doing that cost sharing, capital improvement type of thing, trying to put that together, right?
We had quite
And
an
how to do
extensive,
some facility, shared facility.
does Laurie still take care of the inventory? We spent quite a bit of money and time inventorying all the stuff town-wise in the school system, so all those computers,
No, they have to keep their own inventory.
yeah, but there is an inventory, you could check right away,
Right.
you know. That should be maintained, as taken off every year and added as such.
Right.
We
Well-
can get that.
Again, you know, one of the line items that was in the school budget when I looked at it was, you know, a partial share cost of the scissors lift.
Of the what?
Scissors
Okay.
lift, okay, and I think it was $11,000. And I'm saying, $11,000, why doesn't it just, that 11,000, take it out of their budget, put it in the town budget, and you need the scissors lift today? All right, we'll bring it over to you, okay? I mean, to me, that makes the most sense, okay? I mean, and maybe we need to turn around and look at some things, again, this is a bigger discussion, obviously, but, you know, taking a look at, I mean, painting the spaces in the parking lot, okay? $6,000 approximation, okay? I mean, is that something now that we shouldn't talk to the town and say, okay, you know, park department, can these be done, okay? And put that expenditure and that responsibility on the town parks department, rather than have the school put it in the school's budget and have them outsource it. I mean, that's just,
I think this, you and I have talked a couple times, could be some master plan. My thoughts, it started in '75, is slowly the town taking over. We
understand,
do all this stuff now, playgrounds, equipment and all that. Next thing was moving and taking over facilities,
understand.
and everything comes under public works.
And I think that's part of what's going
And you
on.
have this.
Right, well, part of what's going on is taking a look at some of these shared responsibilities and these shared resources, and Rich and the board are starting to take a look at that, but that certainly is gonna be this year, okay? But I certainly think some of the expenses, some of the capital expenses that are being put out there, this year, we may be able to start realigning those to put them under the one umbrella, if you will. So there's more clarity, and again, this may sound negative, but we're not padding an expense. So then next year, we're being held accountable to that padding of the expense to the Board of Ed, and the state is gonna hold us to that. You know, that's the hard, that's my pet peeve, I'll be straight and honest with you, okay? I mean, we gave, let's say we had to fund them for $400,000, I'll give you an example here. If we had to pay $400,000 like they had to a few years back for the shoveling the roofs off, if we allocated the Board of Education $400,000 for that, next year, when it comes to budget time, the state is gonna look at that and say, no, they had $400,000 more in their budget, we have to give them that $400,000 now, because that's where we funded them the year before.
That may change.
You're
There's-
handcuffing
there's
yourself,
less-
They're talking about that changing now.
Legislation
but it's
now.
not there now. So,
I mean, we did discuss, you know, some of these things at the meetings up there
Right.
and here. And, you know, I think we indicated to them that we wanted some planning on this process. You know, I don't think anything's gonna be resolved during this budget cycle, because this is
Isn't there, it won't be now, but isn't there a meeting with the school officials and the board of selectmen, or at least with
Well,
Rich?
Rich, myself, Sam,
Yeah.
and Pat are meeting.
That's, it's starting to take
Right.
place.
Right, but I mean, the question is in terms of this year's budget process, are you presenting that as part of this year's budget
We
process?
could.
well,
We could do that.
not to the extent that they're doing, but some of these things, like the scissors lifts, like some of these other fees that we're paying, some of the capital equipment, okay, or
Right.
capital expenditures should be brought in this year,
We
I
got a
think.
$400,000, $405,000 in the school budget for maintenance. It's maintenance contracts, capital improvements, building projects, grounds, painting, upkeep, boiler maintenance, electric repair maintenance. There's water testing, and vehicle repair, glass repair. Now, could we move that into the town budget?
It
Do
can
we
be,
have
it
the
can be
manpower to do
paid
it?
out of the town budget, and it would still be, help the Board of Education through that EDO one report. It would be reported as in-kind,
Right.
that we pay for it, that benefits the school. So all capital projects could be run outside of the Board of Ed.
But the only thing, where do you show that money? Under the selectmen's budget?
Well,
Well, there's two
We
different
could-
ways.
we
I mean,
could do
Brian,
it-
I
we
think
could
you're proposing
transfer
a
it out
capital account.
of the general
It
fund
wouldn't be in need
into
of budget,
that
it would be a capital.
capital
Right.
project, school facilities. So
For
it's
that one
isolated
thing. Yeah.
for that
Line
just
item.
school facilities. Like I said, there's $27,000 left in there from the school move. So if they needed 100,000, you'd only have to transfer 75.
Right.
Get it in there and now you build that up, because what happened is their project was obviously less than
I
the
think
60,000
my
they
only
requested.
concern is, and I've experienced it,
Mhm.
I've sat on the Board of Selectmen for many years, and there was always a conflict between the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen. So depending where the money was, who has
Well, the
that
Board of
control?
Selectmen really wouldn't be involved.
That's
Right.
right.
You
and-
go
and
into this
that's what I'm
other
saying,
fund,
it has to be,
They
if
send
it
me the
is for
bill,
the Board
and
of
it gets paid out
Education,
of
then
that
it's showing
fund.
over on the Selectmen side, you know, and we had some real difficulties.
We talk about two different things, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
merging the services, with the services
Yeah.
provided by the selectmen is one thing. Setting up a capital account,
Right.
saying this has to be used for this and
For
nothing
the
else.
Board of Ed
not part of
improvements
it.
Yeah.
only,
Yeah.
Because the
And they submit the
superintendent
bills,
is
and that's what we
responsible
pay
for
for.
school facilities.
they can't use it for anything else.
And my question is the town particular maintenance department that we have, could it handle all the school projects if you wanna put it into the town's hands?
Well, there's union issues, there's a whole bunch of issues.
you
but
have-
I mean, there had-
but you
need
still would have
a
the
piece of
option
plan
of-
to do it.
You can still go out the contract, you still have that option, for some of the work.
Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons.
Well, actually, the school still takes care of the project. I don't think you're understanding that. Like I said, the Board of Selectmen has nothing to do with it.
Well, that's if it's a capital project,
Correct.
but we've also been talking about changing services that are handled by
Regular
the,
maintenance
and I
of
think you
things.
you
Right.
touched on that, so that's two different issues.
Yeah, that won't happen until the following budget
Right.
year.
I mean, that we have
That's
to talk
far.
about, but if there's
But
something
just
you
in-
wanna identify as a capital project.
I think
yeah.
you're right, like you said, it's kinda late in the process to do
Right.
it now, but we can at least raise it as an issue for consideration
Absolutely.
for next year.
Yeah.
So like I said, we can take capital projects right now that they have and do that with them this year.
That's my thought, yes.
You know, it's just
But I
transferring.
agree with that, it's kinda late in the process to do that at this point in time.
Why?
Right, the budget's
You're still
not
giving
approved.
them the money.
Yeah,
But
you
it's not
approved
approved.
it.
So all you do is move the money over to the capital project, so.
Yeah, but we're
that's
asking,
all it can be
we're
used
asking
for.
to move certain items, figure out which items they are, then we have to approve those items, which ones they are. They're not all capital projects that you're looking at.
Yeah, you would only do
Yeah,
capital
clearly
projects.
capital
The
going
maintenance
with capital
is
projects.
allowed.
You know, they've got 61,000 capital improvement projects right there. And they have building projects for 57,000. It's not gonna make that big of a difference, the rest is maintenance.
Right.
Maintenance, repair, testing, so you're talking $100,000 for this year. Whereas we put, put the seed out there and say, let's do this next year. Let's move this over to the selectmen's budget, so we can come up with a firm amount.
Well, technology also had, what, $150,000 that I think responsibly we could put into the same type of a fund, a technology fund,
But Brian,
would you pull it out, pardon?
what Ed was saying, late in the process, we're gonna spend 2 days arguing which categories go to which
Right.
one.
What goes where?
We haven't really started the arguments yet.
Right, exactly.
So we got plenty of wiggle room now.
But I'm saying, just because you haven't been here for 4 meetings, doesn't mean you
Yeah,
can,
right.
take us up for another 4.
We're still on the taking in mode here, so
I
that's
think
why I
we got
figured,
all-
that's why I'm addressing it now, because I think it's something that we might.
Well, it's a legitimate
want-
issue, but
Again,
It is.
I think we've had all
Wherever it goes, it
unanimous
goes.
votes while you've been on too.
I think you should have,
We've had all unanimous votes while you've been on.
I think you should have raised that with your proxy before you left, and he could have brought that up, okay?
you didn't?
Well, no, it's a legitimate issue, but I think Ted's right, is that to go back to the board on Monday and say, oh, by the way, we're gonna do this differently, I think is, we haven't said anything about it in the last month, I don't think. It's gonna make
It's a surprise, it's
difficult,
about last
but
minute,
whatever.
You have a very good point, Brian, I will say that, okay?
No, it is a good point.
I think we should run with it for next year.
Well, but we gotta start before.
Oh, if nothing else, you're
No,
consistent.
no, but put the,
What?
If nothing else, you're consistent.
How am I consistent? Yeah, it really is.
Okay.
And I'm looking at it, there will be talk.
Will we adjourn?
All right, here a second,
Second?
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, have a happy Easter, and then we'll see everybody on Monday, and see what happens.
Hey, Ed, you
What?